Hi everybody, welcome to, I guess, part two of our webinars about animal communication. A few nights ago we recorded with international renowned psychic medium Gordon Smith, and tonight we're focusing on animal communicators. So myself, Dawn Murray, with Lucy Cousin, Carrie Cairns and Niall Morton. Thanks for joining us tonight. I guess I would like to start by saying that from the perspective of a pet bereavement counsellor, that we are not we're covering these subjects out of interest, okay? Simply from the point of view that we don't encourage anybody, nor should we encourage, recommend, suggest that any client or anybody who's suffering from pet loss that you follow a particular path. So we would never recommend that somebody goes to an animal communicator. We'd never recommend a psychic medium. But this is a subject that is broached, certainly my clients regularly, perhaps 75%. A very high percentage of clients broach the subject of the afterlife. Now, that can be anything from mentioning Rainbow Bridge, to going to an animal communicator, to looking at going to a spiritualist church to get a message from a psychic medium or a psychic. And what I think is important is that you know, it was fed back to me that a client, not one, well, the person became my client, but this client had broached the subject with their counsellor, and their counsellor, or they perceived their counsellor to be very uncomfortable. Now, it may very well have been that their counsellor was uncomfortable because they were an unbeliever. It could very well just have been that their counsellor wasn't sure what a psychic was, wasn't sure what a medium was. And whilst our clients are in the depths of grief, they're very astute and they're very intuitive, and they can pick up on a change in their counsellor. So I think it's very important that regardless of whether we believe, whether we're believers or non-believers in the afterlife, as I say, from anything from Rainbow Bridge through to psychic mediums, that's entirely up to the individual. But I think when we're dealing with other people, and that is their belief, we have to have an understanding to be, it helps us be more engaging with the client, because if we say yes, no, I understand, I'm with you in that, I can understand, you know, why you want to go down that path. That is not then saying that we believe or we don't believe. What that is just engaging with the client and letting the client understand that we are reassuring them that whatever path they wish to take is the right one for them. We can empathize with them. And if they ask us any questions, because some people maybe say to me, you know, Dawn, I don't know whether I should go and see a psychic or a medium. What do you think would be best? You know, so to actually understand what is on offer. Now, quite often I do get asked for my opinion, shall we say, on animal communicators. Now, I will give a brief story. Well, I'll try and keep it as brief as possible because I want to bring the panel in here, but I will try and keep my story as brief as possible. But when a client asks me what my opinion is about an animal communicator, them going to see an animal communicator, one of the things, the best advice I can give is go through your grief, experience your grief. let's process your grief first. Think about that a wee bit down the line. It's maybe a bit early. Now, some people will want to jump straight in and go and make an appointment with an animal communicator. And sadly, I happened to read earlier today on social media of somebody who had sent $100. It wasn't in the UK, this was in America, that they had sent $100 to an animal communicator and they didn't get the reading. So we have to be very aware, but that doesn't matter whether you're buying an urn, whether you're buying a piece of jewelry, whether you're buying any type of memorial item, or going to an animal communicator. You have to be very, very careful, especially when you're grieving. And that's why I think it's better to give yourself some time to process your grief. And you will know yourself when you're starting to feel a bit better. And I know that a lot of people go to animal communicators, psychic mediums, because they are looking for that reassurance and validation. Well, my best advice would be please get that from a pet bereavement specialist, like somebody in the Association of Pet Bereavement Counsellors, rather than, because I certainly have, over the years, have had a real interest in psychic mediums, hence the reason I know Gordon Smith. Also, I was fairly regular visitor to spiritualist churches. Initially, I went along just out of curiosity to see what happened. And what I took from attending, like spiritualist churches, for example, was the amount of sort of love that people were getting, the healing, the comfort that they were getting from attending the churches and getting a message. Similarly, with animal communicators, I was very fortunate to be friends with, now she's no longer doing animal communication, she's moved away. So I'm talking in past tense here. Joanne Hull, who was one of the leading UK animal communicators. And Joanne, I'm just going to tell you this story very quickly, just to let you see that I am in no way coming down at all in animal communicators, quite the contrary, and you'll find out why. I wanted to go along. Joanne ran a masterclass in teaching people how to do animal communication. Okay, so basically, I wanted to find out more about this telepathy and how the messages came through. Really, from the point of view of being able to explain it to people who didn't understand, like myself. So I wanted to learn more. So I went along to her masterclass. I was a wee bit nervous and apprehensive, so I took our wonderful IT man, Dave, along with me. Was complete skeptic. Couldn't believe that he had been coerced into accompanying me to this masterclass in animal communication. He said, "Well, I'll just sit at the side and won't participate." Well, that was not in the cards. he got a seat at the table the same as me. So I think you're going to get a lot of mileage out of this one now. Joanne explained it, and Joanne was a fabulous, fabulous animal communicator, in my opinion, one of the best ever. And because I remember one night, Joanne and I were out for dinner, and she just said to me, well, once we'd finished dinner and we were just having coffee, and in effect gave me a reading, if you like. Now, I didn't ask for it. She wasn't expecting to do it. She just came out with it. And I sat and went, right, okay, that's really interesting. None of it I could verify until I got home, and I went home and I verified absolutely everything Joanne said to me. She was incredible. So there's our lovely IT expert and myself sitting at Joanne's masterclass in how to become an animal communicator. And what they did was they handed us all a photograph and told us how to clear our minds, how to focus, you know, how how it was actually all going to work by telepathy. So I was very fortunate in that I got handed a picture of a lovely Labrador. Okay. Now, this Labrador, black Labrador, it was an older photograph of a lovely black Labrador. Just typical, the Labrador, big smile, sitting there, quite chunky, really looking pleased with himself or herself. And Joanne went round us one by one and asked us to look at our photograph and so basically give a reading, if you like. So I looked at my photograph of this beautiful Labrador and I said, oh yes, this is a lovely Labrador that's no longer with us. Oh, correct. Okay, so I had a 50-50 chance on that one. I said, oh, this Labrador likes his food. Correct. This Labrador loves people. Correct. This Labrador likes to go for walks. Correct. This Labrador likes to go in the water. Correct. Well done, Dawn. That's a great reading. And I went, you will. Animal Communicator of the Year, Dawn Murray. Right? Now, you see, I knew you were going to come in, Niall. But wait.
I'm sorry.
I know what you're thinking. I know what you're going with this. But wait. Then we were taken out to Joanne's stables. And this is where the story takes a completely different turn. We went out to Joanne's stables. I think she had about half a dozen or eight stables with horses. She asked us to go and stand outside one of the stables to do a reading. Right now, that one really threw me because this was a big challenge for me. I did a lot of horse riding when I was younger. Went to the stables, but my mind was just a bit blank on this one. Didn't have as much knowledge about the horses as I did about the Labradors. Um, we did a reading, or we had to take our notes. We had to write it all down in great detail, all about the horses. We then went back inside and I said, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't getting anything. Nothing was coming through. The universe was not being kind to me. And then they went to our IT expert. And all of a sudden, now this is somebody who likes Slipknot, came out with I Could Hear Puppy Love Donny Osmond playing. The horse is called, I don't know, Henry VIII type thing. And his nickname's Henry, and he's got a problem with his front left leg. And I can see shotguns. I can see farmers in fields with shotguns, and I'm sitting and I'm looking at him and I said to him, shh, what you, shush, you're making a fool of yourself. you know, you know, calm down. You're not meant to be saying all this. But no, he went on and he had about 20 or 30 different points written down. And he's saying, no, this is what I picked up. This is what I picked up. So I'm sitting there with my hand giving it, oh no, how embarrassing. I wish I hadn't brought him along after all. Meanwhile, Joanne Hull is standing in her face. Her chin was on the floor because every single point from the horse's name to the problem with its leg to the shotguns, every single detail that he gave. Now, it wasn't just me that was cringing, the rest of the class were laughing. He got the music right, he got the horse's name right, he got the owner's names right, he got the owner's children's names right. There was nothing that he did not get absolutely 100% spot on. And Joanne Hull asked if he would be interested in working with her because he was so phenomenal. And I said to him when we came out, where did you get all that information from? He says, oh, it just all came through my mind. So my point is, while yes, I got the Labrador, and I gave no more information about that Labrador than what anybody else could have given. Um, the fact of the matter is, I know 100% from our IT expert who was a skeptic, who didn't want to be there, who knew nothing about animal communication, and he blew everyone away with the knowledge that he came out with about that animal. So to me, I guess I have to say, despite my failed attempt at being an animal communicator, he was incredible. And he did actually use it a couple of times thereafter, where once again 100% accuracy, but it wasn't a particular interest, shall we say, and it wasn't something that he pursued, which was rather unfortunate because he was exceptionally good. Now, if I didn't know that and I only went on my own experience, I'd probably be very skeptical to this day.
Mm.
No, I'm very open-minded about it, very open-minded, and I do think that there is room for everybody, that whatever coping strategies that they want to go down. So room for psychic mediums, room for psychics, room for animal communicators. I think that, but having that understanding and knowledge of what they do and how they do, so that if people do ask us, we're not going to influence them one way or the other, but what we can say is perhaps we can explain to them a wee bit more how things work. So, for example, with animal communicators, they work on telepathy. The dogs can be alive or dead. They can work from a photograph, so on and so forth. Mediums, how they're operating, like as Gordon explained, and that video will be going out separately, but he feels a presence, and that's how he can describe an animal, being in his presence. So in that regard, I do think it's quite important that we do all have an understanding of it, because we can all work together.
Yeah.
So on that note, I think I've spoken more than enough now. So I would like to throw it out to my panel. If anybody, sorry about, we had at the start of Gordon Smith the other night, we had a wee bit of a human error technical hit, shall we say. I was left in charge of the technical stuff. Yeah, that's right. So I was going everywhere. I didn't know where anybody was. I was looking everywhere, just when I was just trying to do all my intros and all the rest of it. But we got there in the end, and we've ironed out all those problems. So I hope they've all been addressed now. So who would like to? Anybody like to?
Well, I'll say something if you like. You knew that, didn't you?
I knew you were chatting a bit there now.
You knew I'd say something. Um, I completely agree with you about kind of going through your grief and it all about being about timing. So often when people have asked me, it's because they are absolutely in panic mode, because they're stressed out of their heads. They're absolutely in the depths of the grief, and they feel that they've completely lost connection with their pet. They can't smell them. They can't feel them. They can't. Everything is gone, and it's stress. And the flight and flight blocking all of those memories, all of those thoughts, etc., etc. So they're scrabbling for anything and everything. So what I often say to people is, exactly as you do, maybe just you need to become more. I mean, this is ideals, and it's just language I'm using here. You need to get more grounded, and actually see what you can do yourself. See what happens for you, when you've got through this stage of grief and into the next stage of grief, because I can guarantee once you're kind of like more grounded and in less of a panic, you will smell them again, you will feel them again, you'll know the touch of their fur, you'll be able to imagine what they felt like on your lap, etc., etc., the pull of the lead, all of those things. So give yourself a chance to, if you like, be your own best advocate. Give yourself a chance to see what happens, and then the best time to go into anything psychic, anything like that, is with a clear and open mind, and not when you're desperate and not when you're in a state. And the other thing I say, and obviously very gently, etc., etc., is like, what will you do if you do get a message? And if it's very positive, what will that do for you? But if you get a message and it's not positive, what will that do for you? And if you don't get a message at all, what will that do for you? Because these are your scenarios that actually, will ripple out. And it's kind of worth, you don't go into this blind. I know you're in a panic. I know you're in a state, and I know you've got enough on your plate and it's hard to think, but, these are the ramifications from going down this path. And, it's worth looking at, you know yourself best, you know what you're like, but it's worth looking at what you'll do and what it is you're actually trying to achieve, because you might not actually be trying to achieve what you think you want to achieve. So it's sort of, sometimes, if you can step back on, that classic thing of, just imagine you're advising a friend, or you're not the one in grief, but you're advising someone else, and see kind of like how you go. And as I say, that's just language and ideals, etc. And it doesn't always go exactly like that, but that's the kind of the stance that I take, because what should we say? I have used an animal communication. That's when Barney was alive, so not after he had died. And it's a long old story, and I won't bore you with it. And whatever happened, we got him a new bed, because that's what the communicator said that he wanted, and he did actually seem to like it. So who knows? And I'll put my hand up here, and as Dawn said about spiritualist churches, etc., etc., I've disclosure here, I've actually been on the platform in a spiritualist church, and I've been the one giving messages, and so I do know kind of what it's like, and I do know the expectation of all those faces in front of you. And you have to be so careful what you deliver to people, and so you don't filter it, but you couch it in a way that is not necessarily going to send somebody like jumping over a cliff straight away, or indeed going up to the ceiling. But Dawn said you have to be really careful about who you engage with, because there's not everybody has the integrity that they should have. And I'm not knocking anyone at all, but it's and when we're vulnerable, we kind of agree to stuff that we would never agree to if we were kind of in a normal state, if you like. So that's kind of my two pennies worth in there. But I also agree with Dawn. Yes, a good 75-80% of clients I talk to, somewhere along the line, it will touch on animal communication, psychics, messages, spiritual side of it. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm done.
It's a difficult thing for a client to bring up, because the client doesn't know how the counsellor is going to react. Obviously, the counsellor shouldn't react in any way, but what the client does not want is for the counsellor to think, oh, this person, oh, this is a mad thought, or this is a crazy thought, or this is way off the borders altogether. So it's difficult for a client to bring it up. So it takes a lot of courage for the client to bring it up in the first place, and for that reason, it needs to be very carefully managed when it does come up.
You're right, Lucy, it does. It takes a lot. And I mean, generally every or a very high percentage of clients will always start the sentence with you must think I'm mad, or they'll say, Dawn, can I run something by you? Now that'll be 45 minutes into us chatting. that they want to run something by me, you know, and that I always know that's the opening gambit for talking about the afterlife. Or they'll say, how do you feel about it? And what I always try and do is say, well, I'm certainly open to discussing it, you know, quite happy to discuss it. And I put it back on to them because they are not necessarily wanting to, they are just wanting to be reassured that I am not going to think bad of them or think they're mad because they've broached the subject. Because, like you say, Lucy, it takes a lot of courage to.
It could be very damaging if that conversation went wrong. It could be extremely damaging, I think.
Exactly, because well, you imagine if you were, you know, you had this sort of feeling inside you and you desperately wanted to speak to somebody about it and you hadn't spoken to friends or family or colleagues or anybody, but you've got a safe space with your counsellor, you've got a safe space to sit with them, and you know, through rapport and you know, we've empathized, we, you know, we validate their loss, we reassure them, and all that builds confidence and trust, so they then feel confident enough that they want to go that step further. And that's, well, quite often it can be half an hour, 45 minutes into, and it's a shame because some people leave it right. They maybe say, well, see the next time we talked on, would it be all right? How would you feel if we talked about things like the afterlife? So they're kind of a dipping their toe in the water, but stepping back, waiting on my reaction, you know? And I say, oh, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, of course we will. Of course we will. So that they can really feel that they've been heard and somebody really understands and appreciates them and is not going to judge them for wanting to do these things. And you know, it can be a coping strategy for an awful lot of people. Even you know, for people who, you know, want to be. I mean, I had a lady who says to me, I'm an atheist, but I want to believe my pets are. My dog will be waiting at Rainbow Bridge for me. She says, but I can't tell anybody that because I'm not a believer. But she said it's the one thing that's getting me through my grief. She says, and who knows, Dawn, in 6 months, 9 months' time, she said that belief might go, but right now it's the only thing I've got to hold on to. And that's what we've got to remember. That may be the only thing somebody's got to hold on to. Carrie, have you got anything you wanted to?
I was just thinking like what you just what you just said then. No, I'm just thinking like going on from what you just said then, where some people, you know, that thought that there is something else, that the pets were waiting for them, and that, you know, that's sometimes the thing keeping people here. Is something I've come across, and so people say to me like, you know, well, do you think that they go on somewhere else and that we'll see them again? And I always say, I mean, I know what I personally believe, but that isn't for me to say to someone, well, I think this and this is how it is. I say, well, whatever brings you comfort, whatever gets you through these darkest moments, that is what happens. If you think they go on to somewhere else, they do. If you don't think they do, they don't. Whatever you believe, whatever brings you comfort and keeps you here, keeps you coping, navigating your grief in as healthy a way as possible, mentally and physically. I'm open to whatever you think because I realistically will never know for certain. But whatever brings you comfort, as long as it doesn't harm you or anyone else, mentally or physically, that's good with me. And I did a interview on Instagram like a couple of years ago now, I think, with an animal communicator, and it was brilliant. And I mean, I've often thought to myself, like, you know, I'd like to speak to a pet medium or animal communicator and just see if any of my boys have, you know, want to like reach out or anything. But then there was part of me that was like, what if I'm you know, like you have these doubts as a pet owner, like, oh, maybe I didn't give them enough treats, or oh, I regret not doing this, and so that part of me was like, well, what if they come through and say, actually, yes, you were a bad owner, and actually, yes, you did do this wrong or that wrong, or yes, I do blame you for my passing. And I just thought, what would I do then? And I'm not saying that's the case because I know deep down I gave my boys everything, but like Niall was saying, you have to think to yourself, what if the message you get does more harm than good? And or like you say, if you don't get a message at all, I think you have to weigh up, why do you want this? Why is this so vital in your grief journey right now? Not saying you shouldn't do it, but just ask yourself, why now? What can speaking to animal communicator give you that just out of interest, what would and then if the client can say X, Y, or Z, then it's like, you can always pet room counselors, we can work with that, we can discuss that and let that person talk about that. But I think it is important to know why you want that, but just bear in mind that sometimes you might not get what you're looking for, or you might get more than you're looking for. But yeah, I think we're going off on a bit of a tangent now. Sorry, but yeah, that was my.
No, I think you're right, Carrie, and I think though, with regards of I would be very shocked and surprised to hear that any animal communicator would say or infer that anybody was a bad owner. I don't think that would ever be a route they would go down. I think quite the contrary. They would reiterate what a wonderful owner somebody was. I think what is something, and I'm looking down here, Sandra's putting up some great comments there about how she had a client who received a distressing message. I don't know what that distressing message was. I received a message one time from an animal communicator that didn't particularly sit comfortably with me, but that was on me. That was my interpretation of what had been said. And it's also that the animal communicator is it is their interpretation of what they're hearing or what they're getting through from the telepathy. But I also think that we need to manage our expectations, and I think that's what you were down the route of, Niall.
Yeah, absolutely, and absolutely, as you said, however clear or open the communicator is, the psychics or whatever, there will always be their filter on it, always.
Yeah.
And so well, yes. So they will, and as I said earlier, you don't ever not give part of a message, and you might couch it in certain terms. But your duty, I think, as a communicator, you're duty bound to give absolutely everything that you get. But the thing of it is that somebody still might dress something up, and actually then it doesn't sit well, or it doesn't resonate, or whatever. And it's very difficult, for someone in grief to cover all of those basis, to say, be aware of this and aware of this and aware of this and aware of this, and I think, whilst I'm on, what just came to my mind as well, again, what I sort of often say to people, and again, this is just an idea, it comes out in different ways, is, we so easily lose sight of ourselves in grief. We lose sight of our strengths. We lose sight of our intelligence. All of those things, it all goes into this like mush of grief and sadness and tears, etc., etc., etc. And it's very easy. And you could say, well, I'm going to say it's very easy then to be handing things over to other people. But of course, you could say, well, I'll hand it over to you because I talk to you as a bereavement counsellor, which is absolutely true. But it's such kind of, as I say, I'm going from an ideal, but I always say to people, are you ready to, give this amount of responsibility to somebody else? Are you ready to, your emotions are just like the word saying tatters. They're very vivid and strong. Everything is in technicolor at the minute. Everything is as loud as it can be, etc., etc. So, right now, are you ready to send that out, if you like, because that's what you'll be doing. And yeah, so I'm going back really to what I said right at the beginning, and then you said, Dawn, it's all about timing as much as anything. Should someone decide to go down that route?
Oh, it was funny
timing
because
and finding the right person. Sorry, Dawn. But isn't it, because I mean, out of it, for every good animal communicator, and I'm very open to this whole concept myself, but it doesn't matter my opinion really. But for every good animal communicator, there will be an awful lot of people exploiting vulnerable people in their grief. So while a pet bereavement counsellor can't recommend any animal communicator, then it would be very important to make sure that they know to go to somebody reputable, and that it's not a regulated area, and that there are a lot of, well, there are very good ones. There are also, like anything else, there are also some that are charlatans, frauds, whatever the word is, and out to make money out of somebody else's grief. So it's very important to for the person themselves, the grieving person, to do their research and find the right fit for them, basically.
And I think for most of the reputable animal communicators, psychics, mediums, unless you trip up to your local spiritualist church where you're going to get as good a reading there, or you've got a chance. You've only got a chance, maybe 1 in 50 chance of getting a reading, but otherwise 1 in 100, depending on how busy the spiritualist church is. But yeah, I think it's most reputable animal communicators have a waiting list. And it can be quite a lengthy waiting list as well, I believe. But, I'll give you an example, of where a message can be misconstrued. So I was told once, now, I don't know if you can see up in the corner there, I have a picture there. It's an oil painting, actually, of a black and white cat. I was told that cat had... Now, I'm smiling at this because it's the only way I can cope with it. But that cat... The animal communicator was really enthusiastic and delighted to tell me that cat had reincarnated and was now living with another family. Okay. And I sat there and I thought to myself, if my cat was going to reincarnate, why did it not come back to me? But she thought this was great news. So I don't think she said it in any way to hurt me. She was actually saying, oh, this is fantastic news, And I thought, oh, well, not for me. It's a bit of an insult, really, because I adored that cat, So that's how easily, she thought I would take comfort from that, from knowing that the cat had reincarnated and was off living. How can you take comfort from that if less they've come back to you, And that's just the way how it can, somebody could. Now, if I had been in the depths of my grief, could you imagine that could have pushed me over the edge? Do you think that my cat had reincarnated and gone to live with Carrie? And I would have been right down at Carrie's door going, give me my cat back. But no, that's sort of joking aside, but that's how easily a message can, where somebody's meant with good intentions, in actual fact, it's not been received with good intention. I wasn't very pleased.
I think just when we're asked about animal communicators, etc. Also, as if we are in a certain way into a session, if we have built rapport, which hopefully we have, it's also an ideal opportunity to open up about feelings, etc., because because they've asked about animal communication, it's like it's about animal communication. We take it as face value, but it's also an opportunity to start to kind of maybe get in sort of under the wire and to ask, and maybe find out why they're thinking of this, what is it that's brought them to that, why that they think perhaps that's the only way forward now, etc., etc. So I'm not saying that we should indiscriminately kind of like probe and question, but kind of that's what we're about. We're about, as Dawn said, we're a safe space. We're there for them to offload. We're there for them to explore their feelings. We're there for them to explore their grief. So it's kind of, to me, when somebody's asked that, it's like, is it really about that, or is there something underlying it, which actually we can explore and go with? And actually, within 5 minutes, the thing about animal communication will be completely out of the window. We'll be down a completely another tack, and that's where we have to use our skills and our active listening and everything, and the whole business, because not every single time is it really about that. It can very often, yes, it can still be about that, maybe 30% of it or whatever, but actually there's another tack that will open up, which we might be going down dead ends. Who knows? But who knows? But I think that it's very often a huge opportunity to sort of dive under the wire, and we shouldn't miss it and be bamboozled necessarily about the fact this is just about animal communication, so I must just talk about this. It's always worth exploring kind of the kind of what's behind that, I think.
I mean, people want to explore all sorts of avenues when they're grieving, and they wouldn't normally, under normal circumstances, perhaps have an interest in. But there's lots of aspects of grief, and I think providing that people are not, because they are in a safe space and they've got somebody to talk to, they're wanting somebody to bounce their thoughts off of. They're not necessarily, as you say now, wanting to go down, or by the end of the conversation they may be onto something completely different. But I think it's important to be able to give them that opportunity, but also to and that's where we can become more engaging, when we understand that for example, you can be psychic and not a medium, but if you're a medium, I think we spoke about this the other night, see if we got it right.
You have to be psychic, I think.
If you're a medium, you are psychic, and so on, and understanding how animal communicators work, from the telepathy point of view, what they can and cannot do, and people's expectations. Because I think for some people, they've sort of wanted to know, if I engage the services of somebody like this, will they be able to have a conversation with my pet? Can you ask them if they're okay about me making the decision, or have they forgiven me because I didn't see some underlying illness? And I'm quite sure Gordon Smith would have come back with an excellent response to that. But yeah, they don't phone them up and have a chat with them. Your animals didn't talk, and although I think some of mine talked. I'm sure they did. I'm sure some of my big Presley up there having a good chat away with me. But it's that feeling, it's picking that up. But I think it's keeping expectations realistic, and it's, for a lot of people, it's the last hope. And it's quite often when we start going down that route, talking about psychic mediums, animal communicators, it's a lot of the longing and yearning just to have some connection again with them. Like you said, Niall, at the beginning, whether it's they've forgotten the smells and all that. And it's almost like, now, this is perhaps not the best word to describe, I'm talking from my own perspective here, but that feeling of desperation, that yearning, that longing just to have something. It's almost like I'm clutching at straws, and I haven't even given expectations, my expectations, any thought whatsoever. So it's not just reassurance and validation I'm looking for here. It's I'm looking for a miracle, I'm looking
Yeah.
for a miracle. I want my pet to be back with me. And that's why I think just being a bit cautious, but having a full understanding. And I think, I think the work that Animal Communicators do, certainly IT Dave, hey, fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant on the horses. But to know what psychic mediums do in animal communication, so we can allow clients to go down that path, and our reaction is going to be perfectly normal, as has any other aspect of what they want to discuss.
Yep.
Which I think is exactly what you were saying, Niall.
It is, because at the end of the day, we're there to talk about their feelings. We're there to talk about what's going on for them in their life right now. We're there to talk about where their grief's taking them. So it has to be normal. And so, we're not going to advocate anything. We're not going to say this or this or this or this. You can actually give an awful lot of support and comfort without actually saying anything at all. So, it's partly, you're in the right space to discuss this. You're not stupid. No, you're not being judged. At the end of the day, whatever you decide to do is going to be your decision. Mm-hmm. And the bottom line of it is, putting it sort of blandly, it's like, do your own research.
Yeah.
You do your own research, find out what it is you want, even if you write down on a piece of paper, it's like, and often I do say this to people, is get a pen and a piece of paper. Don't do it on a computer. Do not do it on your phone. A biro, pencil, whatever it is, and a bit of blank paper, and write down yes, actually. Here we are. Right.
As old-fashioned people.
Yeah, old-fashioned. But it's something about it coming out of a pen and writing. It's write down exactly your expectations. Write down your expectations. Write down what it is that maybe you're wanting to achieve. Write down what it is that's brought you. And it might sound daft because you're like, write down what it is that's actually brought you to this kind of thoughts. Because yes, it's my grief over it, it's my pet, but that can often be expanded. And once you've expanded it, and you talked about your feelings, actually, a lot of processing can be done because you've broken it down into steps then, and then actually the picture changes again. But it's that piece of paper and that pen can be the most mightiest tool ever. But really get it down on paper about what's going on, and then we'll see how you feel. It's out of your head then, so it doesn't keep having to whir around. You're giving yourself a bit of space. It's out of your head, it's on the paper, do it in the morning, maybe. Don't make it a heavy business. Just kind of, 10 minutes, whatever. Look at it in the afternoon. Look at it tomorrow. See how you feel about it. Just give yourself a little bit of a breathing space, because you know what, the animal communicator is not going to go away between today and tomorrow. Well, unless of course there's something happens. But you know what I mean. You've got a bit of time, so you don't have to rush at this. Now you brought it out into the open. You can be more relaxed about it, if you like, and you have got a time. But if you kind of say about anyone that's in grief, it's like get whatever you can down on paper, because there's something transformative that goes on in our heads when it's down on paper, whatever it might be. Screeds and screeds of stuff, couple of words, a picture, whatever it might be. But in this instance, it can just bring a lot of clarity, and you can kind of realize in a way that if you're searching for something, you've got to give yourself a fighting chance to be searching in the right place for it. It's like trying to find water in the desert. Probably not the best place to look, but if you're standing on the cliff looking at the sea, you've probably got a fighting chance.
Yeah, exactly. No, 100% right. And it's really funny, Niall, because obviously in the line of work we do, I know some pet bereavement counsellors, specialists ask their clients for feedback. I don't. If they feedback to me, they feedback. If they don't, they're under no obligation to feedback to me whatsoever. Because I feel as well that if they feel that they've moved forward or they made some progress in their grief, that's fine. I maybe not be the reminder they really want, and so I would never ask them to come back and tell me you know, how was it for you, you know? But funnily enough, just about without exception, the people who have spoken to me about animal communicators have all taken the time to feed back to me, which is really interesting, which I find fascinating. Now, simply for, and it's been mixed. That's all I'm going to say. That I'm not going to say any more. You know, I had a friend down south who used an animal communicator. Now, I don't know where the animal communicator was, but my friend, when she was alive, she lived in Coombe just outside Exeter. Well, quite a bit outside Exeter. But as the crow flies, it was just outside Exeter. And she absolutely swore by animal communicators. She thought they were just phenomenal, you know. And the animal communicators she spoke to, whatever she was told was exactly what my friend needed to hear at the time. That was exactly what she needed. So I have had clients feedback to me when they have gone off and used animal communicators, but like that, not one that I've ever given them a name of. I don't know any names. You know, it's like don't know any.
Nope.
You need to find one of yourself. You know, the only thing I do recommend is a reputable communicator. But I do think that they can do a lot of good for a lot of people, and they can help a lot of people. You know, an hour with an animal communicator can be just as good as an hour with a pet bereavement counsellor.
Yeah.
It can be better. Sometimes it might not be, but I think it's, you know, it's just having that understanding of what it is they do, by way of telepathy, to communicate. So there's each, you know, everybody's self, I don't want to say limited, because that's certainly not Gordon, because I had a million stories for us the other night there. But depending on whether somebody's a psychic, whether somebody's a medium, whether somebody's a spiritualist church, whether somebody's an animal communicator, they do, it's, you know, it's a certain type of communication they do. So if a client said I would like to explore those avenues more, at least having an understanding ourselves of what everybody, you know, what animal communicators do, what psychics do, what mediums do, if we have a better understanding, that's going to come across in our genuineness towards our clients and being able to help them, and help them and support them. Ultimately, though, it's their decision. But I think it's better to have an understanding and be able to guide somebody in the right direction by making suggestions. You know, make sure, you know, maybe you could leave it a wee bit of time, make sure you get somebody who's very reputable. You may have to wait, you know, have a look online. Don't be too quick to hand over money, you know, when you're grieving. I think just from that perspective is far better than a client broaching the subject and them being met by horror or a wall of silence, because that could be very detrimental to their sort of
and the other thing is, you know, we're saying that we're pet bereavement experts, and this is a part of pet bereavement. And it won't go away, and therefore, you know what? There's no point in us ignoring it or not. You know, we've got. You know, if you go in front of a judge and say, "Well, I didn't know the law," but well, I'm still going to put you in prison because, like, you still broke the law even if you didn't know. It's like it's no good as like, you know, hiding under a stone about it. We need to be as informed as we can.
Yeah.
And, you know, we need to keep our opinions to ourselves. And, you know, somebody told me, you know, a long time ago in the counselling, etc., and when I was just a marriage, you know, you're not really there. You're as bland as can be. You know, you're a sounding board, etc. But actually, who you are, you know, and we know we disclose a bit because sometimes it gets things moving. But actually, the majority of the time, actually, you know, you're not there as you, and so. But that doesn't mean to say you can't impart the knowledge that you've got in a completely objective way.
Absolutely. And I think the thing is, we're dealing with people who are grieving,
Yeah.
and that takes there are certain I guess expectations of people who are grieving, who are looking for somebody to help guide them, and a little guidance in the right direction, I don't think has done anybody any harm. And I think it's it's a fascinating subject, animal communication.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at Sandra's message in the chat there just from earlier. Like, you would hope that most people's experience of animal communication is good, that if they find a reputable animal communicator, that they get a message that they would like to hear. But I'm looking at Sandra's message there in the chat where somebody said, fortunately for my client, he was further along in his grief journey when told that he had missed signs of his cat being ill. It was hard enough to hear that, but it could have sent somebody over the edge if told sooner. Like, if I heard that I had missed signs of the dog being ill, even now that would completely flummox me.
You see, and I think for that person, obviously, that Sandra's client was referring to, that's a very irresponsible person.
That's exactly it.
That's very
irresponsible. It might be a good animal communicator for some people, but that's a very, very irresponsible message to give to anyone in that way.
Well, it is, because I think the ramifications and thinking, looking outside the box a wee bit, how is somebody going to accept what I'm saying and to tell somebody they've missed signs? I mean, that's a horrible thing.
That's awful. That's why I was looking at that all
because nobody can prove, not even a vet could say, oh, how did you not see that sign? I mean, they don't walk about with a cardboard sign up. They don't, saying this is what's wrong with me. It is. That is absolutely irresponsible for anybody to say that. So that, in my mind,
you would hope that's in a very, very, very minority.
But I would, I think though that I saw there was a program on, and it was a call center operating with people who were claiming to be psychics and mediums and helping people out with their grief, and people were phoning up and they were raking up the money for that. Well, if they had a call center, obviously, because that's a lot of wages to be paying, and the people were just answering the phone and telling the people what they wanted to hear. But sometimes when we're grieving, it does help that somebody just tells us what we want to hear sometimes. And I'm not talking about we miss signs, but sometimes we just want to hear, rightly or wrongly, that we did the right thing, and tell somebody what they want to hear. So I guess if I was that animal communicator, even if there was a grain of truth in that, I would have turned around and I would have probably told the client the complete opposite. You didn't miss a thing. Because that's a terrible thing to say to anybody. Because nobody knows, not even a vet knows, unless the vet's got an X-ray machine, MRI scanner, built-in testing. We don't know, but
I mean, for a start, animals can hide a lot of signs. So
and I think the very first person to know something's wrong is the owner. End of story. They are the first person to know that there's something wrong. That's not to say it's not advanced, whatever the problem is, but they are the first to know, and they're the first to recognise it, so they don't miss anything. But on that note, that's us reached 8 o'clock, folks. Fascinating. I'm sure at some point in the future we'll come back and we'll do animal communication, psychic mediums again. So this is like part 2 of follow on from the chat with Gordon Smith the other night there, which was absolutely fantastic. Thanks very much for everybody that's come along and joined us tonight. If you are watching us on YouTube, if you can hit the subscribe button, it doesn't cost anything, just hit the subscribe button. It's just to build up some following on YouTube. And thanks very much to the panel tonight, Lucy, Carrie, Niall, as usual, and best wishes to Kirsty, who couldn't make it here tonight. I hope you're feeling better soon, Kirsty. And thanks for everybody that joined us tonight online. Chloe, thank you for that. I really enjoyed the webinar. Thank you. So thanks very much, everybody. Lovely to see you, and lovely to see you tuning in from America, Sandra. Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Good night.
Bye.
Speak soon. Bye-bye.